Hello everyone, welcome to our taproom video, or taproom, not video. It's gonna be video later, but now it's just taproom. So while we're waiting for people that might be late, could you please let me know in the question box whether you can hear me well and see the picture well? Okay, thank you very much for letting me know. So in this, during this taproom, we are going to talk about the storage and the configuration of it for StarWind, and how we recommend you guys to configure your storage if you want to use StarWind. I'm not saying okay, let's just go ahead. So this is the banner you've all seen. That's myself. Hi. And quick overview of today's topics. So basically we'll go over all recommendations, and let's start from the very beginning of those and look at our website, what can be found there in terms of our recommendations. Well, not really recommendations, but more of system requirements. So over here, well, it says here recommendation, but this page is system requirements. So basically this can be, counted as system requirement and not recommendation. So it is required to have at least 2 gigabytes of this space for StarWind installation and logging, blah blah. So we usually recommend RAID 10 for any 2-node setup out there, and we recommend it because RAID 10 is best in terms of redundancy and performance. There are some rare cases in which you might want to use RAID 50 or 60 in case you have read-intensive workloads, and if you want to go with RAID 50, or RAID 60 if you need even better redundancy. You can do that, and it is going to be recommended if your workload is like 90% reads and then 10% writes, or I don't know, 85% reads and 15% writes. Then RAID 50 or 60 will be recommended as well. But I personally like RAID 10, and it's the best one out there. If we are talking about 2-node setup, if we are talking about 3-node setup, you could, if you want to, you could switch RAID 10 to a RAID 0, and this additional redundancy will be gained by the amount of nodes and the amount of replication you have configured in StarWind instead of the ARI redundancy that you have. Also, there is an LSFS device which is a log structured file system, and I'm almost 100% sure each one of you at least once heard about it, and someone might have tested it. I guess someday we'll have a separate taproom explaining all its features, but you can read about those on our website and resource library, or you can read the technical description of it on our knowledge base. So LSFS device is designed mostly for slow SATA drives, but SAS drives can be used for it as well. And we would recommend you to configure your drives in RAIDs 5 or 6 because they have great read speed and horrible write speed. What LSFS does is it takes small random writes like 4K blocks, 8K blocks, and then converts many of those small writes into one big sequential block and writes. Those RAID arrays 5 and 6, they are doing totally fine on sequential big writes, but very, very, very bad on small random writes. This way, LSFS will give you, I would say, good / acceptable performance for reads 5 and 6, and then awesome read performance because RAID 5 and 6, they have awesome read performance by default. This is in terms of this page, and basically in terms of the RAID configuration, like, choose between RAID 0, 1, 5, 6, 10, 50, 60. These are our recommendations in terms of RAID. Then we have recommendations in terms of settings of the RAID, which I would like to share with you because I feel like they are very important. The only thing I want to say about those recommendations is that they are based on Dell hardware. We have a product, I think you all heard of it as well. It's called hyperconverged appliance, where we sell our software. Well, it's a solution which includes hardware, our software, backup software, and like support of all of it. And in that solution, we use the hardware. This is why we've done like tons of testing exactly on Dell hardware, and this is why I'd like to share our settings for the Dell RAID controllers. So here, there they are. This is the document. This is a guide for an engineer who is configuring a system. And I just wanted to say that if you are configuring SATA SAS drives, and I mean like SAS drives or SATA spindle drives, these are the RAID settings we recommend for it. So RAID type, RAID 10, unless something else was discussed with a support engineer, pre-sale engineer, anything, unless you think that some other RAID array will fit you better, then this cache we recommend to have set to default. Write policy to write back. Read policy to read ahead, and secure yes if secured yes if you don't have self-encrypting drives. Then for the SSD drives, RAID name you can configure any name at all. RAID type. For SSD drives, we recommend RAID 1 if it's 2 SSDs, if 3 SSDs or more, RAID 5, and if 4 SSDs or more, RAID 10. So this cache default, write policy, write through, read policy, no read ahead. So that is basically it in terms of RAID settings. And really, I would say these are all the recommendations that we have in terms of storage. I would like you to ask questions you have, because I think you should have a lot of them. If you have 4 SSDs or more and you are using your RAID 10 as your main array, then yes, but you can go with RAID 5 if the performance of it is, fits you, in order to, basically save money, because going with RAID 10 will uh, you will get more space penalty comparing to RAID 5, which is not cool because SSDs are pretty expensive. And so if you have a full flash array and you can do RAID 10 instead of RAID 5, no matter it's going to be a hyperconverged setup or a dedicated one, go RAID 10. If you cannot go RAID 10, go RAID 5. Donald asks question, for tiering storage, RAM, SSD, HDD, can the RAID levels be different? Sure they can, especially if we are talking about RAM, because in RAM there's no RAID. So RAM will not have a RAID. SSD can have like RAID 0, 1, 5, 10, but I would honestly would not configure SSDs in RAID 10 for caching. I would configure those in RAID 5 most probably, and hard disk drives can have like RAID 10, 50, 60, anything pretty much. So the answer is yes. Scott asks a question about our hyperconverged appliance solution and what Dell models are used in there. I will, since this question is kind of off the topic, but there's not much other questions coming up, I'm going to give Scott a hint, but will not give a huge open answer for that. So if you open up our website, you click on this banner, you'll get transferred to this page where you can listen to what I say about hyperconverged appliance if you want to, but that's not going to be extremely informative. Over here, you'll see a list of our models, and you can actually look up the specs and so on and so on. So there's a lot of information listed in this document. It's called StarWind Hyperconverged Appliance Datasheet. So I would count that as an answer. If Andrew asks a question, if using LSFS with SSD, which RAID do you suggest? I would really not suggest using LSFS with SSDs, because LSFS initially was designed for slow drives. SSDs are fast drives, and it pretty much was not designed for, And then if you still want to use LSFS with SSDs, then I would say go RAID 5. Donald asks, great question. Is there a recommended proportion to RAM SSDs and HDDs? For instance, if you want to end up with 8 terabytes of hard disk drive storage in RAID 10, what do you recommend? So if you want to have an 8 terabyte hard disk drive RAID 10 array, I would recommend 800 gigs of solid state drive caching and 8 gigs of RAM caching to it. So 10% for flash cache and 1 gigabyte of RAM cache per 1 terabyte hard disk drive storage. How would I/O latency on a all-flash hyperconverged appliance, let's say, be compared to all-flash SAN? You mean SAN, a physical SAN box that is connected to your any other box via iSCSI, for example, right? Fiber channel. Well, the latency will be much better in hyperconverged because in hyperconverged you are avoiding the network at all. Because when you are building a hyperconverged system, you are able to you are able to use loopback connection instead of the iSCSI or fiber one, and loopback is faster, especially when you have the loopback acceleration that we support, and it basically makes your TCP/IP stack twice shorter, which increases the performance and decreases the latency. Andrew, that's a great thing you said. Follow-up question regarding LSFS with SSD. Previously, I heard it was a good idea to use LSFS with SSD because it writes in chunks to make SSDs live longer, since it prevents them from burning. Yes, it makes perfect sense, and this is exactly how it works, but right now LSFS has a downside, which you actually could have seen on our the page I just showed. Let me pull it up again. So if we go into system requirements, here it is. So storage recommendation. It says that important notice: log structured file system StarWind Virtual SAN device requires having 3 times, actually there's a mistake I would say, cool, more usable disk space capacity from the original device size. For example, 1 terabyte LSFS device requires having 3 terabytes of disk space on the server. Let me explain you how it works. So, LSFS device is a log structured file system, which means it is logging your writes and logging it is logging things basically, and this is why you need the space overhead, because when you're writing to this device, it has, let's say, its own metadata and journal to which it writes certain things, and those certain things require additional space, meaning that you will actually write more than you would usually write. And this is something that, so LSFS at the same time prevents SSDs from like burning themselves because it writes in chunk, but as well it writes some additional stuff which you would not usually write if you would use just a thick provision device, an image file from StarWind. So it depends. You can save SSDs with LSFS and inline deduplication. For example, if you have 100 virtual machines that are running like the same exact OS, this would really save SSDs because the OS itself would have a lot of writes, and LSFS deduplication inline one would save SSDs because it will just not write the information that is duplicated, that does not need to be written once again. So this will save, but it's a very particular scenario, and for particular scenarios like this one or some other ones, I would really recommend you speaking to our pre-sales engineers, support engineers, maybe ask such a question on a forum, and same guys will help you out there. And right now, I'm just talking about general recommendations that are applicable to our most common scenarios. So, next question. Okay, so for 8 terabyte storage, 8 gigabyte of RAM. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Is there a performance benefit to adding more RAM or SSDs, or is that a waste of money? Another way to ask, is there a ratio of dismissing return? Well, Donald, that's a great question, and I don't think there is a real ratio. This is the best ratio that we made for ourselves. If you're going to add in more, it's going to give you the performance, but not as well. How do you say it? It will give you the performance, but with smaller ratio, and the bigger you go above our recommendations, the smaller the ratio will become, basically. But it's not going to be like tremendously slower. You can try. 8 gigabytes of cache is not, of RAM cache is not that much. Usually, like nowadays, servers have like 128 gigs of RAM or 256. So you can configure a StarWind device, give it 4 gigs of RAM, then like 20, then 30, 50, 40, and see the difference in performance. Great question from Andrew. I would actually recommend you, I'll answer your question, but I would really highly recommend you looking through my previous tap room where I was talking about synchronization, iSCSI, and heartbeat channels, but mainly about synchronization and heartbeat. I think I explained well what's the difference between them and how do we recommend configuring them. But still, if you have 2 network cards, I would recommend using one separately for iSCSI plus heartbeat and the other one for synchronization. And your next question was or is a better idea to put both heartbeat and synchronization on both cards? This is actually impossible because if you open our StarWind management console, you won't have an opportunity to put heartbeat and synchronization on the same exact channel because synchronization channel already includes heartbeat in it. So whenever you specify synchronization channel in StarWind, there is going to be heartbeat in it as well automatically. You don't need to specify that. If you disconnect sync cables, sync will stop working, and then that's it. So your devices will stop synchronizing, but one of them will become the master, and who's that heartbeat will decide, and then everything will continue to work until your synchronization channel is back, and the synchronization process will, start running. So your devices will resynchronize. Wasn't? That's interesting. Is there any chance you, if what you're saying is what really happened, it looks like you might had some misconfiguration issues. Have you had an engineer looking at your setup? Or did you have? If you could describe what happened and how everybody was and how everything was configured, if you could have posted that on forum or like to our support. So if you could somehow describe us your like configuration, provide us maybe with an interconnection diagram of how all your components are wiped up, I am 100% sure we would be able to help you. And you can find you can submit a support ticket on our website through our support form. Okay, I'll make sure you get your question answered. It looks like no more other questions are coming up, so I wanted to say thank you very much for coming to this tap room. Thank you very much for questions, and I hope you guys will come back. In case you'd like to contact us, here are contact information, and I wish you a great upcoming weekend. Thank you once again, and bye-bye.